Welcome to ALP Corner, Family Law in the Heart of Houston.
Hello and welcome to ALP Corner, Family Law in the Heart of Houston with attorney Allecia Pottinger, CEO of ALP Law Firm. With more than 25 years of experience handling complex family law cases, Allecia brings clear, compassionate guidance to Texans navigating divorce, custody, as well as everything in between. My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're talking about one of the most public divorces in modern history, Jeff Bezos and McKenzie Scott, and what it would have looked like under Texas law. Allecia, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you. Welcome back to you. I love having you as the host.
Oh, I appreciate it. I love having you as the guest, so this works out. So before we get to the legal side of this, what first stood out to you about how Jeff Bezos and McKenzie Scott handled their divorce?
The fact that they called it a settlement meant that there was the three C's, as I like to call it, were probably in play. The cooperation, communication, and compromise. The Miss Scott, Mackenzie Scott, walked away with quite a bit of money, and Bezos got to maintain his power, so to speak, in Amazon. And so $38.3 million is nothing to sneeze at. It's what she
No.
got as far as the settlement. So bottom line, it worked out, I think for the both of them.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. I would be okay with that as well. I'll split it with you even, Alicia.
Exactly. Just
So
one of those billion,
just give me one. Yeah. So this case happened in Washington State, which, like Texas, is a community property state. So for listeners who may not know, how do community property rules generally work here in Texas?
Okay. In Texas, how it works is the marriage date is ground zero. Anything that happened before the marriage date is separate property. Anything that happens after the marriage date is community property. And there is a presumption that if it's during this time period after the marriage date, it is presumed to be community property. So if you get a debt, if you buy assets, you buy a house, you buy a car, you any employment that you have, that money, the income that you make from your employment is considered community property.
Okay. And is that typically, a 50-50 split during a divorce, the community
Now,
property?
see, that is the misnomer here in Texas. It is. Most people think 50-50 is
Right.
going to split, but the legislature in Texas don't say that the parties get a 50-50 split. It says a just and right division of the property. So you could basically have a 70-30 split. You could have a 45-55 split, and it can be considered just, and it just depends on a lot of different factors. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Now, Bezos and Scott divided billions in Amazon stock without even going to court. If a similar high net worth couple lived in Texas, would there
Mhm.
be extra steps they would need to take to divide stock or business interests fairly?
Actually, that we go back to those three C's. If they can communicate, if they can cooperate with each other, and they can compromise, you can come up with the settlement that will work for both parties. So we do mediations here in Texas, and mediation, we say, as a mediator, I would say if both parties walk away and feel like they didn't get everything that they wanted, then that was a good mediation, because the parties got what they needed and what they wanted, and they didn't have to go to court and let the judge decide what was going to happen, in spite of a judge that didn't know them divide up their assets and property. So
Yeah.
business is as the same.
Yeah, it shows. I suppose, walking away like that, like you said, it shows that they were willing to compromise. It shows that they were willing to work together. So it wasn't
Correct.
presumably too contentious if they were willing to make some sacrifices as to what they
Correct.
wanted. Yeah.
Correct.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yes.
Washington gives judges wide discretion for what's equitable. Texas uses the phrase just and right. What
Right.
kinds of factors can make a division in Texas unequal but still legal?
Okay. That's what those all those different factors. Okay. In Texas, a person can get a disproportionate share of the community estate based on factors such as the fault in the breakup, the if the other party wasted community assets, then there's a reimbursement to the community. If there's a despair disproportionate share of the community can be divided when there is a partner that has more assets after the marriage. For example, I may have had a separate property business that's generating $1 million, and after the divorce, I'll still have that business generating $1 million, but my spouse will walk away with nothing. So the court wants to give some equal value because you know that during the marriage, that partner used their time, toil, and talent working on in that separate property um, business. So there's another one where there if the party is taking and maintaining custody of the children of the marriage, then they might get a disproportionate share. If there's one party's health is not as good as the other party, that may be a reason to have a disproportionate share. Or even we can get into there could be a disparity in the ability to earn a wage and age, those type of things. So there's a lot of different factors that you could end up with that 70, 30, 40, 60% and it be considered equitable.
Okay. And I know, spousal support comes up a lot in the headlines during most celebrity divorces, but not in
Mhm.
this one. How
Yes.
does Texas handle spousal maintenance, and how would that apply in a situation with two financially independent spouses?
um, in Texas, two independent financially spouses would spousal maintenance would not even come into play
Hmm.
because in Texas, the way the statute reads, it says that the reasonable and necessary expenses is what it drives spousal support. So when we look at what's reasonable and necessary, that has different connotations. And so if you have someone who's able to support themselves, clearly they're not in need of spousal maintenance or
Yeah.
alimony, as some other people call it
Yeah,
in
it's
other
not. Yeah, I guess
states.
they don't use that much anymore, right? Alimony.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, obviously, most people aren't billionaires. That's hot take here, but they a lot of people have businesses. A lot of people have real estate, retirement accounts, things like that. Are there
Hmm.
lessons that us regular folks can take from a case like this that would translate to everyday Texans with complex assets?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that everybody knows about the prenup agreement, right? To save your assets, prior to marriage, you signed this prenup agreement. But what a lot of people don't know is there's also a post-nuptial agreement. So you had mentioned those stocks and retirement funds, et cetera. There's a federal statute called ERISA, and ERISA will dictate that only a spouse can give up their interest in a retirement plan. So prior to the divorce, it won't make a difference because they're not a spouse. So they would actually, after the marriage, have to give up their interest in that retirement plan, and that would be a post-nuptial agreement.
Okay.
So you can have those, and um, if there, say for example, you have business partners and people that want to invest in your business, and they're looking at what would happen if you got a divorce from, your spouse. I may not want to invest at that time. That could be a good decision to go ahead and do a postnuptial agreement in that instance, because it will allow and free up money to come into your business. Another thing is it just going to depend on what the business entity is, and based on that business entity is where we would, what would dictate what I would tell them to do. But a postnuptial agreement is definitely an option.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, everyone's heard of a prenup, but yeah,
Hmm.
postnup is not something that comes up or that people really even know exists in a lot of cases.
Correct.
Hmm.
Correct.
Can you explain what tracing means and why it's such a big issue in Texas property cases?
Remember that ground zero? If people commingle money.
Right.
And ground zero, let's say ground zero, we had $1 million that was separate before ground zero, before the marriage. And after the marriage, Texas says any income derived from the marriage time, ground zero, moving forward, is considered community property. Well, if that asset over here is $1 million, is generating income, that income becomes what?
Marital
Community
property or
property.
community
So
property. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where is that money being deposited? A lot of times people just commingle their funds, and they put it in the same, in this account and that account, and we have separate accounts, and then we have together accounts, and it gets commingled. Well, Texas is very specific in that it says there's a presumption that anything that happened after the marriage is considered community property, and you have to show by clear and convincing evidence that it is your separate property. So tracing, having forensic accountants and other people involved is becomes very important if you want to label some of these properties that happened before the marriage as non-community assets.
Okay. Forensic accountants, huh?
Hmm.
That's a crazy gig.
Uh, and it's needed and necessary
Yeah.
for some
Yeah.
people.
Wow. Interesting.
Hmm.
For couples listening who really want to avoid conflict down the road, what's the smartest way to protect themselves? Is it a prenup or would you recommend something else?
Prenup, postnup, those
Yeah.
are if they can work out an arrangement, and think, and if they have children, put their children issues and interests before their own. That those are things that go a long way. I would, in that vein, I would probably say a postnuptial agreement would be a good avenue for an individual who's trying to, make sure that they don't lose their shirt after the divorce.
Hmm.
You know,
Always an interesting topic though, because hard to bring up to somebody, right? Like, hey, I want, asking for a prenup is tough. I gotta believe even asking for a postnup's tougher. Like, do you, I don't know, do you help coach your clients on like how to bring this up?
typically they already have talked about it in the marriage.
Okay.
You're not going to find that people who are interested in doing a post-nuptial agreement are going to be people that are fighting. They're typically on the same page, and they have a goal that they're moving toward. And it may be as simple as I know that you have all this debt over here. We don't want this to interfere with how we're trying to move forward in this vein here. And so the post-nuptial agreement might be the better way to go in order to save and preserve assets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sort of a bigger picture thing you gotta think about, and but I could obviously we've all seen it in movies and TV where it's kind of a joke. Seinfeld famously did a whole prenup thing, but yeah, it's a legitimate tool, and as long as both parties are understanding of the purpose, then ideally
Yes.
they get
Yes.
along with it. Yeah, yeah, that
Yes.
which keeps the fighting out of your office, which is nice.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's it for today's episode of ALP Corner, Family Law in the Heart of Houston. If you'd like to learn more about attorney Allecia Pottinger and her work at ALP Law Firm, visit alplawfirm.com. You'll find resources on Texas divorce, custody, property division that'll help you move forward with clarity and confidence. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave us a review, share it with anyone that you think can get some use out of it. Allecia, I always love chatting with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.